the Daily Mirror is trading blows for the Express. Brexit, Britain escapes worst of Trump tariffs pain. Also a line taken by the Daily Telegraph. And for the Daily Mail, Trump's tariff war on foreign scavengers, quoting some of the words used there, of course, by the president. The I spells out Trump triggers $1 trillion global trade war in threat to UK jobs and wages. Well, our reporters up and down the country have spelled out a part of that, haven't they? Front page of the LBC website, there is the president holding up that board with the reciprocal tariffs. By the way, you can't see all of it because well, part of it is cut off by the way the picture's been taken, by the podium behind which the president is standing. But if you want to look at it, it is on lbc.co.uk, so you can work your way down. My colleagues and I have looked at it. There's no rhyme or reason. It's not done alphabetically. It's not done in terms of tariffs being loaded. Towards the end, you think it's coming, and then suddenly the reunion islands get hit with 73%, and that's right at the bottom of everyone else has got 10%. So quite how they've worked it out, I have no idea. But it does make for interesting reading. lbc.co.uk. Front page of the LBC website, as I say, is also there, and it is effectively the front pages of all the websites as well. Although the Independent website does look at the sad death of Val Kilmer, of course, the Batman star who his death was announced yesterday. Handsome, charismatic, and difficult to work with, it says, but he was worth it. All right, let's see the value of those tariffs and what it means. Dave is in St. Ives. Dave, you're on the radio. Your impression of these. Good morning.
Oh, hi, Nick.
Hello, sir.
Sorry, my throat's a bit croaky. I've had an operation.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, that's by. But
Okay, well, I wish you a good recovery, sorry. I hope you don't run soon.
Thank you. You always cheer me up. But what I would like to know is, how is it one man, or idiot, shall I say, like Trump, can affect the whole world economies, jobs, and even the stock market? How is he allowed to have that much power? Something's wrong.
Because of the power of the United States and the trade it does. As I said at the top of the program, the trade that we do with the United States is worth more than a quarter of all our trade, bigger than the entire trade with the whole of the continent of Asia, and that's just the UK. So that shows what an enormous trading bloc it is. That's why he wields so much power.
Yeah, Nick, but no, what I'm getting at is, why is it one person, i.e. Trump,
I see.
allowed to do that? That's what I'm getting at.
He won the election in November.
Well, yeah, but it shouldn't be. Can our PM? He hasn't got that much power to.
He could if he wanted to stand in the garden of Downing Street and announce reciprocal trade tariffs today. He could do it. I don't think he will. But he could, Dave. But that's democracy, I suppose. And until we think of something better, we're kind of lumbered with it. Dave, thank you. Get better. I can hear in your voice. Hope you get better soon. 7:22. Nigel in Temple Fortune. Nigel, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Well, good morning. I wish Mr. Trump every success in making the economy better in the United States. And there are 2 points I think are really important here which haven't been discussed. First of all our focus is on Donald Trump and how bad it is for our economy. What did Rachel Reeves do in the last few weeks? That she's made our economy an awful April. And now with the national insurance hikes, how many businesses are going to go bust because of that and people are going to lose their jobs? That's the first point. Yes. And the second point about the car story, it's not quite as bad as it's painted. Yeah, how many cars do we make here that are sold to the United States? The United States don't take Ford cars. Okay, well, all they take is Bentley, Rolls-Royce, Jaguar, which they don't even make any cars anymore.
It's worth £6.4 billion.
Yeah, but when your car's selling £300,000 each, Nick, it does take a lot of money to work out how much they make. Most cars are made in Europe,
I've got it. 25,000 UK jobs are at risk in factories such as JLR's, Jaguar Land Rover in the West Midlands, and the BMW Mini plant in Oxford. Those are the ones.
Okay, that's fair enough. But then again, also of course it is, but also in the United States, they build BMWs and they build Mercedes in the Carolinas. I'm not saying it's not going to have an effect, but I think what's more going to have more of an effect is how my life has been turned upside down by Rachel Reeves.
Not just you, certainly employers, people who have members of staff, and the hit that it will be. And we know particularly down at the lower end, and I don't mean this in a derogatory fashion, but down at such as nurseries and places such as that, and nurseries for children and garden centres as well, just to make it plain, as well, with low numbers of staff, that's a massive hit on them. Good to hear from you, Nigel. Happy landings as and when you go back to your place over there. Now, as we're talking about trade tariffs and fiscal headroom and a trade surplus, what do you actually understand about them? Well, I decided to ask LBC's Helen Hoddenott to take to the streets, speak with members of the public and ask those three key questions. What is a tariff? What is a trade surplus? And what is this fiscal headroom? So how do people in London respond?
Tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
Serious stuff from the US, but do people here know what those key terms mean? All right, first of all, what is a tariff?
Charge or something. Some sort of money goes somewhere. It's a form of tax employed by foreign governments on imports.
It's just a duff tax system.
It's an extra charge for importing our goods.
Okay, yeah, I've got here tariffs are taxes charged on goods imported from other countries. What is your general sense of tariffs?
I couldn't care less. That's the sort of thing on the news where I go, oh yeah, that's time to make a cup of tea now. Can't do anything about it. What am I going to do? Write him a letter? Nothing's going to happen. Send him a WhatsApp. Be like, oi, Trumpy, how about no?
Okay, question number 2. What is a trade surplus?
Too much of a trade, don't know.
Trade surplus, I'm not sure about.
I don't know.
Too much product going somewhere that they don't need, but they're sending it anyway.
You're exporting more than you're importing?
That is spot on. So countries like it when they are selling more to other countries than they are importing in.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, good.
very good.
Understand.
Final question. What is fiscal headroom?
He's the fella who did that program on the telly, isn't he? Oh no, that's Max Headroom.
A very complicated phrase that I don't understand.
When I give up my job at the Bank of England, I had to leave all that stuff behind. I'm afraid I can't tell you.
I have no idea.
Fiscal headroom. Is it the amount of money you've got to play with at the end of the week?
So it is the amount by which government can increase spending or cuts without breaking its own fiscal rules.
Well, they can make up the rules, can't they? They can have 15 players on a football field if they want.
Hopefully you're a little bit wiser with LBC's Helen Hoddernott's report. Staying with American matters, there's plenty of UK stories coming up, but it looks as it's being reported that this man is to, and I quote directly, retreat from the White House.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Yes, Elon Musk there wielding his chainsaw in his role as the leader of the Department of Government Efficiency Initiative, or DOGE. President Trump reportedly telling his inner circle that he's getting ready to retreat. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham, joins us now. Professor, what has Mr. Musk achieved, if this story is correct? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, he's certainly shaken off the federal government. Most people would recognise that the federal government was a somewhat bloated institution in terms of its size and budgets. And the whole idea of his Department of Government Efficiency was that he would go in there and find where the waste was. But he, as your clip suggested, he took a chainsaw to it. He adopted the Facebook mantra of move fast and break things. And break things he certainly did. Yes, he has cut lots of budget lines and laid off lots of people, but he's caused a huge amount of disruption in the way he's done that by virtue of the fact that he for example, sent out an email saying anyone can leave the federal government with 10 months' pay. He didn't actually check who they were, so we lost huge amounts of crucial people. And things like nuclear weapons design, nuclear safety, the technical functions, people who get jobs easily elsewhere or people who could retire, very senior people, and it's caused havoc across the federal government. So if the Social Security Administration doesn't work, the Veteran Affairs doesn't work, lots of other departments have lost key people, and as a consequence there's a lot of disruption caused in the federal bureaucracy. And of course he's also cut the aid budget massively, so the richest man in the world, the poorest people in the world, do their knees in a whole variety of areas, cutting programs like measles prevention, AIDS prevention, monkey flu disease prevention, Ebola, and so it's actually had a catastrophic effect in a whole variety of areas.
Professor, if the story is true, how much might it have been driven by the performance of his other companies? Because, of course, he had a rocket crash and his Tesla cars aren't selling particularly well.
Yeah, I mean, the stock price of Tesla has fallen beyond all records for any company and any quarter as a car company as a consequence of his toxic politics. I mean, he was selling a product that appealed to progressive people who wanted an environmentally friendly car, and now he's completely undermined that by his behaviour, both in government and indeed his attacks on people through X, his support for a whole variety of dubious causes at home and abroad, the AfD in Germany. He's actually persuaded Trump to provide a lot of support for Afrikaners to come on asylum visas from South Africa. I mean, brown people come to America, but he wants to bring in white Afrikaners from South Africa, and he's got that to be accelerated in American politics. So he's a toxic figure, and that's had a major impact on his companies, particularly Tesla.
Professor, I must leave it there so we can get to the news. Thank you for your time. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham. Now, coming up after you, sir, we will come to this country. I promise you, and tell you some of the stories that we're going to be covering. Not least, we have a problem with our teenagers. Typically, they have some of the worst socio-emotional skills among developed nations. What does that mean? Well, the ability to talk effectively. The ability to relate to you, to your relatives, to your friends, whatever it might be. Why would it appear we're so backward? And here's definitely one place that was completely backward last month.
It's claimed that Heathrow were told about issues with the substation just days before the fire that caused havoc. I'm LBC's Henry Riley with the latest.
And that's coming up too, as well as the business secretary. He's the other side of the news. So it's 7:30, breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari on LBC. The news is read by Thomas Watts.
Donald Trump's announced wide-ranging import taxes on his long-awaited Liberation Day. Britain has been hit with a 10% tariff on all goods bound for the US, with countries like China now facing a rate of more than 50%. It's claimed frozen tax bans, a benefit squeeze and higher bills will leave many families worse off. Analysis by the Resolution Foundation says working-age households are on track to lose £400 in the year ahead. The Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is to call on NATO allies to step up their defence spending. He's expected to tell a meeting in Brussels the alliance needs to become stronger, fairer and more lethal. LBC weather, breezy with plenty of warm sunshine, becoming cloudier in the south later, a high of 19 degrees.
Morning. The Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has told Times Radio he's disappointed by 10% US tariffs, but says the UK is in a better position than other countries. That baseline tariff, which is due to come in on Saturday, is lower than the 20% on imports from Ireland and the rest of the European Union. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says that's a major blow to the world economy.
I agree with President Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules, and I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy. But reaching for tariffs will not fix it.
The Times has learned the government missed the opportunity to return the controversial influencer Andrew Tate to the UK to face rape and human trafficking charges because it failed to respond to an extradition offer from the US. Florida's Attorney General wrote to the Home Office last month to say that he was willing to arrest Mr Tate if ministers requested it. The British Attorney General, Lord Hermer, denies ever receiving that letter. Working-age households are predicted to be £400 worse off on average this year. The Resolution Foundation says they're facing a triple hit of tax and bill increases and benefits not keeping pace with the rising cost of living. And Liverpool have taken another step closer to the Premier League title by securing a 1-0 win against Everton. Meanwhile, Ipswich won for the first time this calendar year with a 2-1 victory at Bournemouth. For a roundup of the news on demand, you can subscribe to the Times News Briefing podcast.
Canada stood right now?
Canada is hit by sectoral tariffs, 25% on aluminum, on steel. We also have a trade agreement with Mexico and the United States. The acronym is called CUSMA. There is no tariffs on everything that is covered under CUSMA, but what is not covered will be subject to a 25% tariff. And there is now an additional tariffs on cars and parts that will come into effect, but then they'll be suspended for 3 months until the American administration figure out how to deal with this and how to administer that part of the tariffs. That's what we understand to be the situation. And what's interesting, James, and a change, is that he's rolling all of this into legislation. Now, for Canada, this presents a different scenario of trying to influence American legislators, because everything before that was done through executive orders of the president. This way, if it goes to Congress, that means we will have much more touch points to engage with congressmen and with senators to try to defend our interests.
It sounds like you feel that talking, negotiating, persuading is still a viable avenue, that you can get perhaps some of what you want with the Trump administration.
Well, yes, from experience, because we know that there is a very high cost to the tariffs, even though they deny that's the case. The tariffs will have an impact on the cost of living, inflation, interest rates. I would expect the markets to react badly to what has been announced today because it is chaotic, it is not clear, and it has a wide range impact. And this is just the first round. Countries that are targeted, and a number of them, and that includes Canada, will want to reply. And then there is, this logic of us entering into a dance with the Americans where everyone is going to hurt each other, and it'll have a very detrimental effect on the American economy. So this isn't over by a long shot. I think there's still going to be some movement, especially if the American economy takes a nosedive.
Your Prime Minister, Mark Carney, talks of acting with purpose and with force. That does sound very much like the logic of a trade war is inescapable at this point.
Well, for all intents and purposes, it is a trade war. Prime Minister Carney, I think, has made it very clear that our relationship with the Americans has changed forever. And, one of the consequences, James, of all of this on Canada is that this is going to force us to have a very hard look at our economy, how it operates, where our weaknesses are, and to make some very fundamental changes to remain competitive. We're going to have to look at how our federal system works and what Canada's position is in the world. So who knows? In 20 years from now, we may actually thank Donald Trump for having forced our hand in taking a very hard look at Canada and making our country more competitive and more prosperous.
That's quite an optimistic view of it, is it not? It seems to me that, there's going to be a lot of economic pain, and if you are moving away from the US, well, that is a colossal economy right on your doorstep.
And that will always be the case, and the Americans will always be our main trading partner. That will not change. But we traded with the United States before we had trade agreements. And so we will deal with whatever the relationship is, but we also will be looking at diversifying to Europe, to Great Britain, to Asia, and making our economy more resilient. Canada, like Europe, like Great Britain, has had productivity issues in the last few years. The Americans have had a high level of productivity, 2.6% increase last year, a very good performance, but the rest of the world has been either stagnant or actually losing ground, which has been the story in Canada. So this whole episode in our relationship is going to force us to address these issues. And so that's the way we look at it. And so be it. So be it. It's going to make us more competitive and a more prosperous country.
I wonder how you have found all these negotiations with the US. Is it frustrating, essentially making the argument that tariffs are going to hurt everybody, and then it sounds like the Trump administration is not listening?
It is disturbing. It's disturbing. It's, destabilizing because of the personality of Mr. Trump. And we live next door to the Americans. We, one of the challenges in Canada is always managing that relationship. But James, keep something in mind. It not only is it an economic powerhouse, it is our neighbor. The United States is also a superpower. And it behaves like a superpower, which means that when they have obstacles in front of them, they tend to swat them away. They have impulses. And all of this is put on steroids by President Trump right now. And so we get it. We understand it. Our view is that we want to help the American administration implement their program. But this whole talk of tariffs and a tariff economy is very disturbing.
Jean Charest there, a former Canadian minister, now part of a special government body set up to deal with Canada-US trade relations.
Were and are looking forward to those tariffs taking effect, including those in the US steel industry, who often face competition with imports from neighbouring countries such as Canada and Mexico. So for more on these tariffs and how they could impact the US steel industry, I spoke to Stephen Capone, who is president of the Capone Iron Corporation in New England in the US.
I'm a structural steel fabricator here in the U.S. I take the raw material that is produced at the mills, and we cut it, weld it, drill holes in it, and shape it and get it ready to ship off to the job sites for the building assemblies, the columns and the girders that generally hold up buildings. Over the past few months, it's been touch and go. We're working at about 1/3% capacity right now. We have a lot of competition coming out of Canada, Quebec, Canada specifically, and since the inception of NAFTA about 30 years ago, they've just been gaining more and more of a foothold here in the New England states, and they've been decimating our industry. And right now, it's unfair competition. They control over 90% of our market.
So, how are you feeling right now with the announcements that President Trump has made for your sector?
Well, for my sector, which is the 232 tariffs, I congratulate him. I think it's a great move. He has to do something. Something has to be done in order to fix this imbalanced trade and this unfair trade.
And you think he's done the right thing?
Yes, well, it's better than doing nothing, and I think he's taken a step in the right direction. I applaud his efforts.
Okay, so you said you're about a third capacity. Do you have capacity, though, to meet extra demand now, right now? Or will you need time to establish better supply chains or invest? I mean, can you meet increased demand if that does happen as a result of these tariffs?
Within a short notice, yes, I can. I have 2 facilities, and not only that, with my allied fabricators here in New England, we have plenty of capacity. The mills in the U.S. have plenty of capacity. There's no question about meeting supply and demand.
How do you think this should play out?
Sure, I think there's some sort of trade agreement is always healthy, but it has to be balanced trade. It has to be fair trade. What's in play right now is not fair trade. It's unfair trade. It's the revised version of the North American Free Trade Agreement. And free trade at this point right now is not fair trade.
Just paint a picture for me very quickly. How many people do you employ, and potentially how many could you take on? Because President Trump is saying that this is going to grow America. There are going to be lots of jobs. You know, it's going to make America wealthy again.
Well, I hope so. I'm counting on him being right. I currently employ about 80 people in 2 facilities, one here in Massachusetts and one in the White Mountains of Berlin, New Hampshire. We could easily triple our staff once the demand calls for it.
There is a lot of concern away from your sector. Let's just say your sector does grow. However, the concern is with these tariffs, the price at the cash register for your weekly shop, your monthly shop, is going to increase. Is that a concern within your family, within your neighborhood?
Of course, it's a concern for everyone, but I think prices will ebb and flow. I think after a period of time, once the dust settles, I think prices will normalize to a point where everybody's working, everybody's making wages, if not better wages, because we're all busy. And I think once everything gets, like I said, settled out, it should be fine for all of us.
A lot of faith there in President Trump. That was Stephen Capone speaking to me earlier.